We are live.
The Committee of the Whole Operations is now called to order. I would ask you to rise if you are able for the reading of the invocation. As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us so that we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Please be seated. Ms. Clerk, has the roll been taken?
The roll's been taken.
Okay, members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest for the items appearing on tonight's agenda? Seeing none. At this time, I ask the members of the committee what items they would like to separate for discussion purposes. Note that item 612, item 1, airport business case workplace will automatically be separated as there is a proposed amendment. Councillor Stanwell?
I'd like to separate 6.1.1 and 6.1.3.
Councillor Carpenter?
Yes, 6.1.2, please.
So Councillor Carpenter, do you want all of 6.1.2 separated?
Yes, please.
Not seeing anything else. Councillor Sakoli, can you please move the motion to approve all items for consideration consent, not separated for discussion purposes?
Yeah. Oh, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Sullivan, that all items not separated for discussion purposes be approved. Thank you. All those items that are subject to the vote are item 6.1, nope, item 6.2.1 and item 6.2.2. Separation of items carried on a recorded vote of 11-3. All those voting in favor are Councillor Sullivan, Slash McCurry, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samuel Carpenter, Martin Caputo, Secolia, Mayor Davis.
So we do not have any delegations this evening nor presentations. Councillor Van Tilburg, please read the motion to place all separate items for consideration consent not previously voted on the floor.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Samuel, that all items separated for discussion be approved.
So now we will now take up separated items in order they appear on the agenda. So Councillor Samuel, you separated 6.1.1.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say how pleased I was to see this report come forward, providing opportunities for retrofitting to improve the cost of energy for citizens is something that's very important to me. The one question I did have is after the feasibility step, what would be the timeline if we go through that? What is the timeline for the next step to be able to actually implement a program?
Through the chair, to you, Councillor Samuel. Good evening, Gagan Batra, Manager of Business Support and Sustainability. Thank you for the question. We're expecting the feasibility study to take about a year, after which it would probably take maybe 6 months to do an application for the capital costs through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And considering the length of time it typically takes for federal approval, probably I'm expecting rollout around 2026.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to us moving forward with this. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Councillor McCreary?
Chair Caputo, thank you very much, and a fine job you're doing so far tonight, sir. Through you to staff. So this is a good news story for the community, right?
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah, and Gagan, I wonder if you could speak to your preference or how this money should flow through several fingers before it comes to us and then to the recipients?
To you, Councilor McCreary, I don't have a personal preference right now. However, in different studies we've seen, there are different avenues. You can go with a rebate program, or a loan program through local improvement charges, or you can do a straight up grant program to cover part of the costs. The feasibility study is going to give us the recommendation based on our housing stock and particularly the income comparison of residents here and what they would be best to apply for. However, the rebate program is something that's been cited as not being as great as the other options because the upfront costs, especially for some of these retrofits like solar paneling or building envelope upgrades, can be quite high. And that's not conducive to residents that are of the non lower income, for example, who may have some of those older homes that are in need of those retrofits. So personally, I don't have a preference. However, rebate programs have been shown to be not as successful as the others.
Yeah, so for low income families in the city of Brantford, it would probably be somewhat difficult for them to front the money to do this work and then receive a rebate, which flows through, I don't know how many hands. So that, I guess what you said, I think that makes a lot of sense. So the Clean Air Partnership is a third party, which is doing work for another third party, which is FCM, which is representing the federal government. So the Clean Air Partnership, they appear to be a nonprofit. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
And if I read it correctly, I think their chair is formerly the CAO of Solarship, with whom we have some history here in the city of Brantford. So at least we may be seeing a familiar face. Thank you for that.
Not seeing any hands. Call the vote. Oh, how did I miss you, Councilor Slass?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to staff, the funding for the feasibility study would be an application through to FCM, as I understand it. But the funding to fund the program itself can also come from FCM. Am I understanding that correctly?
Through the chair to Councilor Slass, that's right. Typically with FCM funding, their requirement is that we first do a feasibility study to determine the best avenues and best funding so that they can appropriately assign the funding. And then we would do an application again for the capital stream once we have that feasibility completed.
Now, is that a grant from FCM or is that a loan from FCM?
I believe right now it's through a grant program. And the city would apply for that once the feasibility study is complete. And that's the structure right now. However, years down the line, once we have the feasibility study complete, it may take a different shape. However, FCM would front the costs. It would be a capital grant. Yeah.
Having said that, I would presume then if we go forward with the program and the funding flows as a grant in a grant form from FCM, it would behoove us to grant it to community members that are doing retrofits as opposed to charging them and then collecting back on their tax return, correct?
Through the chair, I'm not sure how to answer that question right now. We really have to do the retrofit study or the feasibility study to determine the best way. However, in other municipalities, they have been successful with low and local improvement charge programs. That's just one of the avenues, though, where it gets applied then to the property tax roll. But again, we don't really know what the best structure is at this point.
Okay, fine. I look forward to the report. Thank you.
Now, not seeing anything further. Call the vote.
Thank you. The Home Energy Retrofit Program carried on a recorded vote of 11-0. All those voting in favor are Councilor Sullivan, Slass, McCurry, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samwell, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Secolia, Mayor Davis.
Okay, we will now move on to 6.1.2 Brantford Airport Board, and I'm pretty sure there's an amendment. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Carpenter asked for this to be separated. I don't know if he wants to hear the amendments first or speak to it before the amendments. Okay. The first amendment is moved by myself, seconded by Councilor McCurry. The council approves a non-competitive acquisition to retain a certified appraisal company to complete the appraisal of land and structure building value and best value for the facility, and that council approves a budget of $110,000 excluding HST to be funded from, and it says here airport reserves, but I'd like to say the council priority reserves because it was Councilor Carpenter that asked for the appraisal in the first place. And speaking to the rest of it, the reason why we're going with the non-competitive acquisition process is because when staff reached out to the various companies that would do this kind of work, only one responded with any indication that they were interested at all in responding to this work. So with only one possibly responding, we might as well just deal with them initially in the first place.
Councilor Carpenter?
Speaking to the amendment then?
Yes.
Yes. When I requested that this be done, it was clear about from Michael Bradley, that this would have to be done regardless. I didn't need to move an amendment or a resolution, to have this done. It was a requirement to have it done. As a matter of fact, if we're talking about privatizing the airport or making a private corporation, that review would have to be done. So I do not support spending this out of council priorities. It's for the airport. It should be funded by the airport. Thank you.
Councilor Secoli?
Yes, thank you. I guess this is for the manager of real estate. The airport reserve funds currently, is there enough, or maybe this is for finance, is there enough money in there to fund this? Because it's, I'm assuming, substantially higher than what we were thinking it would cost to have an appraisal done. And even if there's enough money in there, is the money that is in there already allotted for maybe repairs for the airport or things like that? Can you speak to that?
So through the chair to Councilor Secoli, I'd like to refer or defer this question to Joelle. I see that she's online and she can speak to the amount in the reserve, and possibly after that, I can speak to what that would do to our reserve once this is completed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Joelle Daniels, Commissioner of Corporate Services and City Treasurer. I'll just confirm that the balance in the airport reserves prior to any money allocated for the business plan is approximately $850,000.
And then perhaps someone could speak to what that money is usually used for and if there's availability for this to come out of that.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councilor Secoli, if this does pass, we have $110,000 coming out of the reserve to fund this appraisal, as well as what council passed in August to pull $430,000 from the reserve to build 2 additional rows of T hangers. So I can't speak to exactly what that does from a facilities standpoint at the airport, but I can speak to that being a little bit tight, in my opinion, for what would need to be done in terms of repairs to the apron and other buildings at the airport moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McCreary?
Chair, thank you very much through your staff. So anecdotally, we're told that there's an appraisal required in the event that we do embark upon a municipal service corporation. Do we have an opinion legally about that? I mean, we've heard that mentioned a number of times, and I'd much appreciate if we had some assurance that that actually is the case. Because if it's not the case, there's no reason to proceed with any of this right now.
Is there staff that can answer that question?
Yes, through the chair, we have legal representation, Michael Latorno here. I can maybe call him up to speak to that. I just don't want to put him on the spot because I don't know if he was prepared with any information on municipal services and municipal service corporations.
Mr. Chair, it's Brian Hutchings speaking, the city CEO. If I could interject, I'm sure Mr. Letourneau can't give legal advice to council in open session. So to Councilor McCreary's points, if the city decides to go down the road of MSC, which it's probably 6 to 8 months out before we can present that. It was very premature. We're talking about a number of months ago. We would need an appraisal of the lands and the assets of the corporation at that point in time. So that's probably 8 to 9 months out. But obviously to transfer those assets to a separate corporation, we would need an appraisal on them.
And what would be the time frame for such an appraisal? Would an appraisal in the prior year be sufficient for embarking upon the MSC? Or would it be something that would have to be embarked upon at the time of MSC? Does anyone know the answer to that one?
Obviously, Councilor McCurry, the closer to the MSC, the better, but obviously appraisers can mark value up with land values over the course of time. It's their expertise, but the closer the better.
Okay, thank you on that. I was happy to second this. I still, I'm still not certain that this is the appropriate time to be doing this. We're a ways away from embarking upon a municipal service corporation, and I don't really see anything on the horizon with what we're doing tonight, but I am happy to support the amendment before us as well.
Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard that earlier that the $400 and some thousand capital project to construct these will be funded out of the airport reserve. And yet I thought I previously had heard that the funding would be debentured, or that the capital cost of the build would be debentured. Can somebody please yes or no that?
So through the chair to Councilor Sluss, the $430,000 coming out of the reserve would be just a small portion of the build. The remaining $3 million would be debentured.
Okay, so this is in all, it's a down payment, is that?
That's the best way to put it, correct?
Okay, and there would still be roughly 300,000 if we approve this in that account. That would be for regular ongoing maintenance at the airport. Was that what that would be used for?
Yes, that is correct. A lot of capital updates and capital maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, so I'm leaning towards why would we spend $110,000 out of the council priority reserve right now when we've already heard from staff that the appraisal closer to the establishment of the Municipal Services Corporation would be better served, and in which case I would assume the business plan for the Municipal Services Corporation would at that point have the assets being valued, including this certified appraisal of the actual asset itself. So if a deferral is in order, I would say this gets deferred until I think we've heard from CAO Hutchings, maybe 9 months down the road. Is that friendly?
Are you asking for a deferral as friendly? Does the mover take it as friendly? Speak to it first, okay? So I'm just gonna go back in order. I'm gonna go now to Councillor Sullivan.
Speaking to the original amendment, I too, with it being 4 months before the end of the year, I think we should be tabling this and just waiting until the budget season and just work it into the cost of the budget.
Councillor Secoli.
As for the manager of real estate, just because we provide direction today, does that mean that you're going to go out and hire someone tomorrow? Are you able to take this directive and then time it appropriately for closer to when you're going to be presenting the MSC so we have the most accurate appraisal amount? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Secoli, yes, I'm assuming if council does give staff direction to move forward with this, then we can associate a specific timeline. There's only two caveats to that. Number one is this quote that we see in front of us will likely expire, and I can't guarantee that the price will be the same. It likely will be, but that's not something I can guarantee. And then the second point that maybe I failed to reiterate on earlier is the appraisal is not simply an appraisal. It's a real fulsome look at the airport, the values of the buildings, the condition that they're in, the income that the airport brings in. It looks at the airport as a whole, and that's really important to staff in order for us to implement the business case associated with the MSC. So we almost look at it as a first step in bringing the business case forward.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Second time speakers. So we'll go to Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Through you to staff to continue on the line you were talking about. Because this is a more in-depth evaluation than just simply an appraisal. Do you have any idea what the timeline would be for something like this?
Yeah, so through the chair, they're looking at anywhere from 3 to 6 months to provide us with the full report. It's not just a month or two.
Okay, so if it's 3 to 6 months, it would be fairly fresh when it's at the time when we need it for the MSC. So it'd be prudent to go forward with this at this time so that it's ready for the next step.
Through the chair, that is our recommendation.
Okay, and with that information, Mr. Chairman, I think it would be ill-advised to defer this. This needs to go forward now so that the work can be done to be ready for the next step for the MSC.
I am going to refer now to Councillor Slash, who was waiting in the portal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not clear on what's on the floor. Is it finance from the council priorities or from the airport reserve? We've talked both ways, and I don't know which one is actually on the floor.
Through the chair, at the moment, it is council priorities.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yeah, I'm good to go with most of this. I understand the timelines and stuff. The problem I have is the source of the funding. I'm not sure that this is actually council priorities at all. This is either coming from those that want to create the board and the new company, or it's some sort of a staff movement. So I just think that we need either another funding source, or we build it into the budget, or something to that towards. I don't believe that this is actually falls under a council priority. So what are the other funding options for doing this? Are there other reserves we can pull from? Is there simply the airport funding, or is there some other reserve that we can pull from that isn't under council priorities?
Is that a question to staff?
It is indeed.
Through the chair to Councillor Van Tilburg, there's really limited options when it comes to funding this particular study. Certainly Airport Reserves Council priorities would be the ones that most fit. Other ones that would be available would be the contingency reserve, but we really recommend keeping that for more of those unforeseen type of items, and use of that reserve does require 2/3. There's also general capital reserves as well. But we do know we have a well-documented capital asset sort of infrastructure funding deficit currently. It would not be my recommendation to go to those capital reserves to fund a business plan.
Would there be a way to do it by embedding it into the budget for next year?
Certainly, if there was a deferral of this item, if that's what council wanted to the budget process, it could be considered through that process.
It could go through the budget process. Thank you very much.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, my opposition isn't to have this done. We're gonna have to have this done. You know, CAO just said we had to have this done, and closer to the time of looking at making it a corporation would be better. And we've heard that that can be done in the timeline with the current moving it forward. My concern is having the taxpayer pay for this. We've always said the airport funds itself, although we know it doesn't completely fund itself because the taxpayer funds staff costs. But having it funded by contingency fund is directly funding to the taxpayers. So, and we heard it, did I read in the report correctly that it said there's funding? And when I read the report, it said there's funding for this in the airport reserve. So if there's already funding in the airport reserve, why would we not be using that? So I won't be supporting this, but if it comes from the airport reserve, you may find my support there, but you won't find it from the taxpayer.
So not seeing any speakers. Councillor Hunt, you were looking to a deferral?
Sorry, originally, and I'm in agreement. So originally it was the airport reserve.
removing your motion to make a deferral?
How about?
Yeah.
Okay, so friendly amendment back to the airport reserve. How's that?
Okay, does the mover accept it as friendly?
In the interest of seeing this passing, I think that's the best option. I think we'll accept that. So,
Or can we have that on the screen? So we will be voting on the amendment or the deferral? Yeah. Okay, so we'll be voting on the amendment as presented. As amended friendly.
And that amendment carried on a recorded vote of 10-1. All those voting in favor are Counselor Slass, McCreary, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samuel, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Secoli, and Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Counselor Sullivan.
All right, so Councillor Martin, you have another amendment?
yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The second amendment is moved by myself, seconded by Councilor McCurry. The council approved the non-competitive procurement for the construction of the additional T hangars by Area Construction, Inc. And that the Commissioner of Public Works and the Manager of Purchasing be authorized to execute a change order to agreement 2024-32 for the expanded scope pursuant to section 4.02E of the purchasing policy and with an upset limit of $3,430,000. And speaking to this, I quite often don't agree with sole sourcing, but this is a company that give us the best price for the contract for the existing T hangars. All we're doing is expanding the number of T hangars at a proportional cost for it. So essentially, this is the best cost. It saves us months of going through the whole procurement process just to end up where we're trying to go here anyway. So I hope council can support this so that hopefully we can get these hangars built sooner rather than later. As I said before, these were supposed to have been built more than a year ago. So it's important that we get these moving forward, and this is a way to save some time in the procurement process and move this forward in an expedited manner. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Martin, can you get a seconder for that?
Yeah, I said Councilor McCurry was seconding that.
Amendments on the floor? Any discussion? Councillor Carpenter?
Yes, on the amendment. So my understanding, currently they're on site building now, or they just finished building? It wasn't clear.
We're waiting for permits from the county in order to start construction on the initial.
Okay, so these are contracts we are currently employed is what we're saying. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to be clear on. Thank you.
Not seeing anything further, call the vote.
Thank you. That amendment carried on a recorded vote of 10-1. All those voting in favor are Counselor Sullivan, Slass, McCurry, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samwell, Martin, Caputo, Secoli, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Counselor Carpenter.
Okay, so Councillor Carpenter, you had this separated, so floor is yours.
Yeah, there's a couple of items here that I will have some concerns with. I want separated. One of them says item C, that any reference made in the report. So we're going to accept a report, if I understand it correctly. But any reference in the report to selling the airport lands or operations to private ownership and management or dissolving the airport altogether and selling it be removed from the report. Why would we accept a report that we remove recommendations from? I mean, you don't have to accept any of those recommendations, of course, but why would we take items out of a report? I don't understand that logic. So I want C separated, as I won't support changing a report that we paid for to do or for staff or whoever did the report. And secondly, there's another item here. There's a resolution about is number 3. Is that coming forward separately, or is that part of this omnibus resolution? Item 3 was the airport fees and charges. Is that
Yeah,
part
it's
of
coming
this?
separately.
That's coming forward separately? So it's not part of what we're voting on right now? It looks like it is.
But we're still on item 1 right now.
Well, we're doing 1, 2, 3. We get to speak
Yeah.
to all three of those twice.
Yes.
That's sort of not how it works. I think we only get to speak to this one resolution twice, if I recall the rules of order.
Through the chair to clarify, at the beginning, we had them separated into item 6.1.2 and then item 1, 2, and 3. And we clarified if you wanted to separate all three or just one at a time. We have done that in past practice as well.
Yeah, but separation doesn't allow me to speak twice to each one of them. That's what I want to get at. Okay. All right. So I want to speak to the last one too. The next one is saying that we want to waive all fees and service charges or so that no one at the airport pays any fees. I got a problem with that one, so I want to separate that item 3 as well. Thank you.
So we are still currently at on item 1, Council Martin.
Okay, we're speaking to each of these separately. Okay. Okay, what's in item 1 is the recommendation from the airport board. That's not what was in the staff report. It's a little confusing. And I wonder if staff can clarify, are the options to sell the airport and dissolve the airport being removed, or are they part of the report that come from staff?
So through the chair to Councillor Martin, it was our recommendation to the airport board that those options be included in our report. And it was at the airport board where that was suggested that it become removed. The airport board report goes directly to council and staff provides a memo alongside the airport board's report to speak to staff recommendations and the board's recommendations. So this specific recommendation came from the board directly.
Okay, so and if somebody disagreed with the option of removing those options from the airport, they could move an amendment to change that back to what staff recommended.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Piccoli.
Yes, so speaking to number 1 and that item 3 is something I was going to speak to as well today. That we remove any reference to selling the airport land or operations. I would like to move an amendment that we strike item C. I just don't think we can have a fulsome discussion. Oh, I need a seconder. Councillor Carpenter. I just don't think we can have a fulsome discussion on this without looking at all of the options first. So that's my reasoning.
Mayor Davis.
Yeah, it was, I attended the airport board meeting where this was discussed and it wasn't unanimous, the decision to remove this from the staff report. I voted that it be remain, and I did so because the report was telling us what we need to do to finish the process of deciding whether to go to a municipal service corporation. It also, the board and the council and the city were on the cusp of spending some pretty significant, if we go to the municipal service corporation, investing very significant sums of money in the airport. And yes, we're doing the T hangars right now, and that's going to pay for itself. But if we go the municipal service corporation route, there could be a very substantial investment to develop an industrial subdivision off the east end of the airport. Also, there's some vacant commercial land that could be developed. That's 190. So my position, the position of some councilors or some airport board members was that if we want the process to be open and transparent, this decision to go to a municipal service corp, invest significant sums of money and staff time into the airport, we should, I think, in the interest of transparency and openness and full debate, look at all the options, one of which would be transfer the airport to a private interest, would run it as an airport, or disposing of the airport lands. We know there are certain members of our community that would like to debate those issues. And so I think to make this major change in the way we're managing the airport and what we're going to be investing into the airport and its future, that it be a fulsome debate and discussion, thus making the final decision, whatever it might be, I think, more acceptable. So I'll vote in favor of the amendment.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
I just want things to be clarified here. We will be voting back and forth, but we are or we are not actually changing the report, because I didn't believe we can actually change reports. We would doesn't the report have to be received? Like literally just received, and in other words, that's the report from the airport board with the attachments of the things. The rest is a recommendation for us. Could somebody just clarify that's what we're doing here, that we're actually not changing the airport board's report?
Okay, Councilman Sherburne, we can amend this amendment.
Through the chair. So this is a report that came from the airport board with recommendations for city council to approve. So at this point, if committee wishes to amend this resolution, it is in order to do so.
Okay, thank you.
On the floor right now is the striking of clause C. And that's what we're voting on at the moment.
So to get clarity, we are voting on the amendment to strike clause C from the amendment. Call the vote. Councilor McCreary?
Sure, thank you. So I thought I was clear on this until some members of committee spoke. So the author of the airport business case work plan was whom?
So through the chair to Councilor McCreary, that was Tara Tran and myself.
Okay. So that report had a reference to the possibility of selling the lands or dissolving the operations. Is that correct?
That is correct. Those were two of the four options.
Okay, so that at the airport board, then the board struck that from the report. Is that correct or no?
That is correct.
So the board struck that from the report. That was a yes, I believe, right, from staff? The
Yeah.
board struck that from the report.
Yeah, I'll let Tara Tran speak to that, please.
Good evening, everyone. Tara Tran, Senior Planner from Long Range Planning, assisting with this project. At the airport board meeting on August 12th, the staff presented a work plan in a staff report to the airport board. We were asking the airport board to provide comments to the staff report. The comments that we received are now presented in this September 3rd airport board report, asking council to direct staff to remove consideration of selling the airport lands or dissolving the airport from staff's work plan.
So that, okay, I understand now. So that comment from the board, was it unanimous?
Through the chair, no.
Was there a recorded vote?
Through the chair, I'm not certain. I'm seeing from Emma that no, we don't record the votes at the airport board.
Was it 5-2, 10-1? Any recollection? Was it a clear majority?
Through the chair, I don't recall.
Okay. Yeah, this just gets more and more convoluted, does it not? So we have like dueling points of views. So were staff were directed by council to produce this report, is that correct?
That is correct.
And did staff solicit any input at all from the board prior to the final draft of the airport business case work plan update?
No, it was presented to the board the one time.
Presented to the board, so board members had no input whatsoever.
Yes, sorry, that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report that's before us is the board's input to staff's work plan. And I was one that voted in favor of removing selling the airport. Because the last time we looked at selling the airport, it set the operation back by months, because when you're talking about selling an airport, people aren't going to move their business to it. They're not going to bring their airplane here for long-term hangering. So it was my recommendation that we take those items out of this report. And as was said, it wasn't unanimous. There were some that said, you know, we need a more wholesome report. And this is the board's recommendation to council. It's up to council to decide whether they want to accept what the board is requesting. It's totally in order for this to be amended. Especially if it's going back to what the staff report originally said. That's what staff have recommended. I fully understand why people would vote for the amendment that's on the floor. I personally won't be, but I expect it'll pass. And once that happens, then we'll vote on the resolution as amended as it goes forward. But I think the idea of putting it out there that we're considering selling the airport or divesting of the airport is harmful to the businesses of the airport. And there's quite a few businesses at the airport that rely on the airport being there in order for the business to exist. You can't have an avionics shop if you can't fly your plane into where the avionics shop is. So a lot of businesses would close out there if this airport were to stop operations. And that was my rationale for removing these items from the report. And I fully understand if people support the amendment, but I won't be. Thank you.
Councillor Slass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I read this, if you vote on item 1C, if you vote yes, you're approving what the board is recommending. If you vote in the negative, you're voting to leave it in. Is it not that simple?
No, it's not, but clerk, can you just get some clarity?
So through the chair, we have shown it on the screen here. If we remove any reference made to selling the airport lands and operations to private ownership, we're removing clause C. The board voted on this and it passed. I'm not sure what the numbers were as requested. But if we remove it, then we're not some of the members voted not in favor of it at the board.
Okay, I don't really care what the board did. What we have in front of us is a recommendation from the board that actually says to take it out. So if we vote against that, that means that it stays in, correct? I think we're making something really simple. We've taken something very simple and made it very convoluted. You either vote yes or no. Yes if you agree with the airport board, no if you don't.
No, Councillor Slass, I think it's, yeah, you're right, it's the other way around. Vote yes, you want it in, you vote no, you want it removed. Other way around. Wow.
Okay. All right, then I'm really confused because if I read this, it says to remove it. And now I see on my screen that that's been shared that has been stricken.
Councillor McCreary.
This convoluted striking of the item is it's really out of order. If folks don't like what's there, vote not to uphold it, okay? This is like the bait and switch that we've been using with the strike and replace. It's got no.
Point of order on
It's
the
got
point
no,
of
absolutely
order.
no.
This is
Councillor
not,
McCreary.
this is not out of
Point of order. Can we just get clarity as to how and what we are voting on at this particular point, Ms. Clerk?
Through the chair, at the moment, we are voting to strike clause C, shared on the screen. So we are removing any talk to sell the airport lands in the report.
Chair, I'd like you to rule on my point of order that striking is not germane to this and that it should either be voted in or out as a simple vote with a separation. That's the proper way to proceed.
So make an amendment to separate clause C. Is there?
Yes, sir.
I'll raise a point of order.
Striking is in order by Robert's rules.
It is, thank you. You've already ruled that the motion to take it out was moved and seconded and on the floor, and there was no point of order raised.
Yeah. Back to the speakers. Councillor Sakoli.
for sake of providing clarity, removing clause C will allow the report to remain intact to how it was originally presented to the airport board. So striking out clause C will allow for staff to review the option of selling the land and will allow for staff to review the option of dissolving the airport or selling to private ownership. It will allow them to look at all of the options alongside a municipal services court. So we just want to remove this part so that the report will remain intact from what was originally created by staff and presented to the airport board. So just for the sake of clarity, thank you.
Mayor Davis.
Okay, but even simpler. If you support staff's recommendation that that be considered in the final report, the consideration of the possibility of selling or transferring the airport, you vote yes. Simple as that to this amendment. If you support the airport board's position that it not be included in the assessment, then you vote no. I think it's about as simple as you can make it. So I attended the board. The vote was about, I think it was 4 or 5 in favor and 3 that were opposed to taking out the reference to the sale of lands. And when I considered this, I agreed in part with Councillor Martin that it'll cause some disruption to the airport, but I think it'll be a short-term disruption and it'll settle an issue before you make the important decision of going to the Municipal Service Corporation, whether that's something that that should be that we should proceed with the sale of the airport. Because the reality is this: once you get an appraisal, which you need anyways, Municipal Service Corporation, it's going to create the debate. So you might as well accept the fact that there's going to be a debate and you deal with it and you try and deal with it on the basis of a staff report that'll provide us with some logic and some analysis. And I think otherwise, you're kind of ducking a debate that's going to happen anyway. So might as well deal with it head on. So I vote yes, or will vote yes.
Councillor Carpenter.
Second and last time for speaking to the amendment. I'm going to vote yes as well. I don't think it's appropriate for us to change staff reports. So that we keep the staff report intact, as the mayor said very eloquently, then everything is discussed and open and the public will know that we're being open and transparent. There's nothing being amiss here. Everything's being dealt with. So I will vote yes as well.
Councillor McCreary.
It's interesting to hear that members of this committee don't want to change staff reports. I would remind everybody present that the report on 25 William Street spoke to something different than what staff recommended, and the fact that it's in the landfill is because this committee chose to follow the course of action of not following staff recommendation.
We call a vote on the amendment.
Striking clause C of the amendment carried on a recorded vote of 8-3. All those in favor are Councillor Sullivan, Slash, Hunt, Samwell, Carpenter, Caputo, Sakoli, Mayor Davis. Those opposed are Councillor McCreary, Van Tilburg, Councillor Martin.
So item 6.1.2, item 1 as amended. Call the question.
Item 6.1.2 as amended carried on a recorded vote of 11-0. All those voting in favor are Councillors Sullivan, Slash, McCreary, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samwell, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Sakoli, and Mayor Davis.
Wow. Okay, so Councillor Martin, 6.1.2, number 2.
Thank you. Just by way of explanation, this building is in the way of the next logical development of commercial hangars. It's not really a building that's suited to airside use. And it needs to remain vacant so that we can tear it down soon and start building some commercial hangars there that will generate revenue for the airport and help it sustain itself.
Councilor McCreary?
So do I understand it that there was consideration being made to lease the building?
Through the chair, yes, we did receive an offer to lease.
Staff aren't required to bring unsolicited lease offers to council, only unsolicited offers to purchase, correct?
That is correct. They're generally dealt with at the real estate committee internally.
So what is the role of the airport board with respect to things like leasing? Obviously, the airport board has taken an interest in building T hangars, but what about leasing of premises? Does the board have any input into that?
So through the chair, I'm not 100% sure if it's within the scope of the board. However, it was discussed at the board meeting and voted on at the board meeting.
And the outcome of that was what's before us?
That is correct, that the building remain vacant.
So I would suggest that somebody arrive at the answer as to whether the board should, could, or does have input into leasing. And maybe, did I hear that we have legal staff here today? Maybe we could take that under advisement and have an answer for that when this returns at the end of the month to this committee.
Mayor Davis?
Yeah, there's no great mystery here. The board is an advisory board. This decision about what to do with the building 190, it's a council decision. And so the board rightly is giving us advice that 190 for now be left vacant. And I think it's good advice because 190 is where we were keeping our records, city records, kind of behind the area where the police train their dogs. And if you know that building, you know it's in bad shape. It's not really appropriate for airport use. It's not big enough. But the land itself is the prime land for the construction of a commercial hangar. So we begin attracting commercial tenants to the airport that need access to a runway, i.e. airport related industry or commercial enterprises. Right now, until the decision is made on Municipal Service Corporation, now would not be the right time to make that decision. If you lease 190 now as is, that's going to prevent the Municipal Service Corporation or the council's case may be from making a decision what to do with that property 190 next year. So we want to keep the options open. The best way to do that considering the best use of this property is to leave it vacant for now. And that's what the board is recommending to us. And so we as a council, we have their recommendation and we either accept it or we don't. And I think you're hearing from Council Martin and I, we're suggesting to you that we accept it.
Not seeing anything further. Call the question.
Thank you. Item 2 of the Brantford Airport Board carried on a recorded vote of 11-0. All those voting in favor are Councillor Sullivan, Slass McCurry, Hunt Van Tilburg, Samwell Carpenter, Martin Caputo, Secolia, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, we are now on 6.1.2, Third Amendment. Councilor Martin?
Thank you. Yeah, by way of explanation, this arose out of a comment from a staff member indicating that we're undercharging for a lot of our commercial hangars. And the desire with removing the airport from the airport fees and from the city's fees and fines bylaw is so that we can raise the rents on the commercial hangars as rents go up at comparable facilities around us. Because of the increase in real estate costs over the last little while, we've fallen behind. And we need to phase in a fairly significant increase in our commercial hangars. And that's hard to do under the guise of the fines and fees bylaw. So by taking the airport out of that, it'll allow us to get the commercial hangar rents up to where they should be, and also allow us to increase the rents as rents for this kind of space goes up. That's a very big step in keeping the airport sustainable. It'll give us the money to do other capital repairs that don't generate revenue, as well as future builds that will also help to generate revenue for the airport. So I see this as a very important step for the airport, because right now, I think the comment was that we're charging about a third what we should be for some of the hangars. And this will allow us to phase in an increase to get them up to where they should be. Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter?
Thank you, Councilor Martin. I do appreciate that explanation. That's very helpful. It's the wording that I'm a little bit stuck on. It says that staff investigate the airport being exempt from fees and charges by law. Does staff understand that that means exempting them from any charges at all? Or just a different bylaw that's separate for the airport?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, the intent of the report and investigation that we bring forward would be to remove it from specifically the fees and charges bylaw, but the intent would of course be to still charge for all the services at the airport. That wouldn't change.
And they'd be separate. They'd be on a separate. Okay. All right. That's, I appreciate that clarification. That's what I needed to have. Thank you.
Not seeing anything further, call a question.
Item 3 of Brantford Airport Board Report carried unanimously on a recorded vote of 11-0. All those voting in favor are Councilors Sullivan, Slass, McCurry, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samuel, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Secolia, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, Councillor Samuel, you had 613 separated.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment on the police station task force being disbanded. So first, I wanted to thank all of the councillors as well as the staff and the Brantford Police Services staff that have been on that committee. I wanted to make sure that people watching at home knew that there would be regular reports going to the Brantford Police Services Board in regards to the development there, and also to council as well. So we'll be receiving regular updates as well anyways, even though the task force is disbanding. And I just wanted to mention too that the task force has done a great job as well as our staff, and it is on budget and moving along wonderfully. Thank you.
Not seeing any questions, please call a vote.
Thank you. The Police Station Task Force report carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. All those voting in favor are Councilor Sullivan, Slass, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samuel, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Secoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, we do have 2 resolutions on the agenda tonight, but Councillor Carpenter, I think you have made a withdrawal of your resolution.
Yeah, I'm withdrawing item 7.1 because that work's been done and there's no need to move the resolution forward. Thank you. Thanks to staff.
Great work. Mayor Davis, can you please move your resolution and state your seconder?
Yeah, I'm looking for a seconder. Let's see. Here's folks, lack of hands. I'll go to the team over here. I'll go Councillor Samwell on our side here. But I think obviously the fact that so many wanted to second this is an indication it should receive good support, and it absolutely should. So I'll read it. Why don't I read it? So, request to the Chief Justice of the Superior Court. Whereas the trial of the 1995 lawsuit between Six Nations, the Grand River Band of Indians, and the Attorney General of Canada, His Majesty the King and Right of Ontario, court file number CV 18-594-281, offers an opportunity to resolve centuries-old grievances and injustices. And whereas the resolution of these claims is critical resolving the tensions that exist throughout the watershed between Six Nations, the Grand River First Nation, and area municipalities. And whereas the lawsuit has taken 3 decades to get to trial, a result of, in part, innumerable and unconscionable delaying tactics of the Crown as represented by the federal government. And whereas resolution of the lawsuit would support and strengthen the provincial land title system in the Grand River watershed, therefore the Council for the Corporation City of Brantford hereby resolves that with respect, Council requests the Honorable Jeffrey Morowitz, Chief Justice, Superior Court of Justice, Ontario, sign a judge as soon as possible to hear the trial of Toronto Court File Number CV 18-594-281, and that the court proceed as expeditiously as possible to conclude the trial of the matter. B, the clerk be directed to forward a copy of this resolution to Honorable Doug Ford, Premier, Honorable Doug Downey, Attorney General of Ontario, the Honorable Jeffrey Morowitz, Chief Justice of Ontario, the Honorable Greg Rickford, Minister of Indigenous Affairs of Ontario, Right Honorable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister, the Honorable Arif Virani, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, the Honorable Gary Andasangari, the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations Canada, and to the clerk of all municipalities in the Grand River watershed, asking their councils pass this resolution post haste. I should mention, we do have in the audience, we did have Linda Parker, who was in the public section earlier this evening. She is Chief Sherry Lynn Hale's political assistant. And also we have Krista Mahan, who is a professional assistant to the Chief in Council. They're here as an indication that of support for this step. So this 1990, the theme here is justice delayed is justice denied. And a 30-year delay of probably what is the most important and complex of various land claim compensation claims in Canada is unconscionable. And it's really not something for our country and our legal system to be proud of, that has taken this long. Now, it's not all the federal government's fault. Certainly the federal government, through various pretrial tactics, which involved delaying and refusing to produce relevant documents, which resulted in a number of pretrial procedures that lasted years. Certainly they had a hand in it, and it has taken a long time for Six Nations to gather their evidence, prepare their case. But regardless, it's now ready to go to trials. I've been advised by Six Nations. The difficulty, since this will be a long trial, is finding the court allocation, the court resources, and the judge to take this case on. So this resolution is an indication from us as a political body, neighbor to Six Nations, and in some ways, I believe a friend and an ally, that this should be given a great deal of priority. It's an opportunity to, and just so people from the public know, this is not a claim for land. It's a claim for compensation for injustices from the early and mid 1800s. What Six Nations has done is they've taken 22 land parcels in the entire Grand River watershed where the surrender done in the 1800s was either non-existent or questionable, and also a combined claim for that accounting and damages for monies that were received by the Crown when land was properly surrendered that were then not properly accounted for. It's a claim that's probably worth in the billions. It certainly, I've had a chance on a number of different occasions to review the court pleadings, listen to Six Nations staff and legal advisors. It's a claim that has a lot of merit, let's just say that. But it needs to be heard because it provides like a once in a generation, like a once in a century opportunity to resolve some of these injustices and deal with the lingering tensions that are here in the watershed. And it should not be squandered, and continue to delay this squanders it. And this will be an indication from our council that we would be very pleased if the judicial system would give this priority and have this matter tried as soon as possible. We're not in any way indicating what we expect the court to do with it, but I think it's within our rights to ask the court to give this some priority, the hearing of this long delayed matter. So I hope it will have unanimous support. It's just the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Councilor Carpenter.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this forward, and thank you for fully understanding, comprehending the whole sphere of this court case and the ramifications of the importance of it, working with our Six Nations neighbors and partners on resolving a long-standing dispute that seems to be dragged out through the courts because, in my opinion, it seems like no one wants to find a resolution. They just want to drag it out. And this is getting to the bottom of this, getting a full hearing and a settlement. It's long overdue. It doesn't need to be another generation. It needs to be now. And both the provincial government and the federal governments both need to step up and do the right thing, as you said, and bring this forward. So I really want to thank you for bringing this forward and the full understanding of the court case and the ramifications of how important this is to our community and the whole Grand River watershed, as a matter of fact. So thank you for that.
Councilor Samuel.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to, I'm going to keep this very short because I think the mayor covered everything very well, but I just want to say how pleased I am to be supporting this tonight. And I totally agree with the mayor that it's the right thing to do. And I appreciate that he brought this forward. Thank you.
Councillor McCreary.
It is beneficial having a lawyer as a member of this council, and I give kudos to Mayor Davis for finally addressing this longstanding issue. Certainly the folks in Ottawa, the folks in Toronto either don't know or don't care what a problem this has been to municipalities like us, specifically us for all these years, the difficulties that we've experienced, development headaches, and you know, the decline in relations between many of the communities with Six Nations of the Grand River as a result of this. I think this speaks volumes about the fact that the city of Brantford cares to recommend that this be advanced in the court system. It's reprehensible and it's misunderstandable why on earth it has taken 30 years to even begin to deal with this. And hopefully, as has been said before in history, hopefully this is the beginning of the end for this issue and its impact on the city of Brantford.
Not seeing any further. We call the vote, please.
Thank you. Item 7.2 carried unanimously on a recorded vote of 11-0. All those voting in favor are Councillor Sullivan, Slash McCurry, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samwell, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Secoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, there are two notices of motion on the agenda tonight. Since they're both yours, Councillor McCreary, can you please read the titles?
Yes, the title of the first one is 8.1. Retroactive fee refund for plan of condominium conversion application for 1 and 2 Melrose Street. And the second one, as you may have guessed, Mr. Chair, is 8.2. And it is called designation of 40 Richmond Street, former Victoria School under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act.
Okay, so please note that the notice of motion deadline for the next Committee of the Whole Planning and Administration meeting is this Thursday at 9 a.m. We are now adjourned.